All right. We got to get Michael Tulip. It's NBA draft time. The Illini are big factors in this NBA draft with two potential first-round draft picks and Kasper, Sakishonis, and Will Riley. We will break down what we think of them as NBA draft prospects, where we think they could be headed. But Mike, happy draft. I know this is a fun time of year, man.
It's the best time of year. And you can go back to former podcasts. I've said this every single year we've been doing it. It's so consequential because you get the few weeks of the NBA finals where all eyes are on it. What's the roster construction that can help you win a championship? What's the style that can help you win a championship? And then how much do you try to implement that to your draft process? Because you only, the draft is 3 or 4 days later. And then you have free agency after that. So it's just the makings of what could be, potential dynasty for the Thunder, or, who can knock them off. The East feels really wide open. I think it's why we're going to see a ton of movement in the next few days.
Yeah, I think it could get wild. If you're an East team like Orlando, you're going to be aggressive because it's wide open with three guys, superstars, out with Achilles injuries. And the West, man, you got to keep loading up because it is unbelievable. And Oklahoma City is going to be tough to beat, but there's a lot of other good teams that might have to shake things up a little bit to be able to compete with them. But, man, we're coming off of what was one of the most enjoyable NBA finals, in my opinion. I really found myself rooting for the Thunder just because I like when the best team wins, Mike. But how could you not fall in love with the Indiana Pacers and just what they brought every game, the resiliency? It was complete team basketball. Anybody who thinks the NBA is all me is not watching NBA basketball anymore because the teams that are winning have been fantastic teams. So just from your perspective, what was most appealing from a basketball perspective about that NBA Finals?
Yeah, I mean, it was a super unique finals experience in general for me, just being here in Indy. I mean, look, the Thunder were the team to beat all season, and they have the MVP, who I thought was really fabulous in terms of his floor game in Game 7, despite the shooting woes. Jalen Williams is a star. Chet, I think, is just scratching the surface. But for me, really, what got me so fired up was seeing a team like the Pacers get that close to winning it all, and everything I love about the sport, uh, you know, that team possessed. And team sports are meant to be synergistic. The whole point is to identify roles and have everyone maximize those roles with a level of selflessness. And this team not only possessed that like egoless trait, but they showed that if you consistently play your ass off, and you can bust through any type of analytical shortcoming. And I think that's what it felt like throughout that series. Was you had this whole, it's magic, we can't explain it, how are the Pacers getting this far? No, it's all the characteristics that a coach stands up in front of his team for the first time in their first meeting, begging them to do, like, to possess those characteristics. And so, but it's the human element that steps in and prevents a lot of teams from doing that. So that's what was so cool about the Pacers, I think, making it that far, was because, like, you could try to replicate their style in their system, but you got to have the guys for it. But yeah, I think it is always good, like you said, because it happened with the Warriors back in the late 2010s, having a team that, people are trying to knock off. It just makes for a better, it just makes for a better kind of David versus Goliath type of viewing experience. I think we all enjoy.
And what's funny is, like, I get why everyone flocked to the Pacers. The Thunder have a lot of those things too. Like Shea is an unexpected star, right? Like when they traded for Paul George for this haul that included Shea, no one was sitting there going, that Shea is a future superstar, like MVP candidate level player. And then Chet was a very high draft pick, but Jalen Williams was one of the best draft picks we've seen in recent years. And they had all these pieces. Alex Caruso is the perfect piece, and like my NBA spirit animal, just because of how hard he plays. Like they had it too. It wasn't like they were this conglomeration of stars thrown together. Like they drafted well. They found the right pieces, and they had those same characteristics as the Pacers. Just they were expected to be where they were. So exactly. It was so much fun to see those two teams battle it out, and for the Pacers to push this to 7 games and even lead at halftime despite Halliburton going down. We're always going to think of the what if, Mike, but it was really fitting for that series.
Yeah, and you make a great point with the Thunder too. They did possess a lot of those traits. Because like we saw just how high level the effort got in that series. And I know you could say, hey, it's NBA finals, but we haven't seen that a ton over the years. And all these guys, I mean, the Thunder's defense, for how poorly they shot it, I think they shot under 30% in 9 games. And some of the turnover woes, and just to continue to defend the way they defended. I mean, that's one of the best defensive teams I've seen in probably the last 25 years. I mean, the '04 Pistons come to mind, but like they weren't like that. They weren't like get into you at half court and make you look like you haven't played basketball before. It's pretty remarkable. And now comes the tough part for Sam Presti. Not that he hasn't had any tough parts before this, but eventually Jalen Williams is going to get paid. Chet's going to get paid. And how do you keep together that core? Because they seem like, when I talk about, the egoless type of guys, I think Lou Dort would take a pay cut. I think Alex Caruso, if it gets to that point, would take a pay cut. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
And what's helpful is when you're armored with dozens of first-round draft picks, you can just keep reloading.
99th percentile GMing. It's unbelievable.
Before we do dive into more of the draft, I do want to get your thoughts, Mike, on the injury news for Illinois. Ty Rodgers, a knee injury. We don't know the full extent of it, but of course, Brad Underwood telling us about it at this point certainly seems like it is significant. So without knowing exactly what it is, how long he'll be out, it does seem like it's a significant injury. If he does miss significant time, Mike, what's the impact of this on Illinois?
I mean, it's huge because he was a key part of that retention component that we've leaned on heavily to forecast this team. And so the versatility defensively on the glass, I think, was much needed, given that there's just unproven commodities, I think, at this level in particular in those areas. So, yeah, I feel for him because you hope that he can continue to stay mentally locked in so that he's ready when the time comes, whether that's this season or if he has to sit out this year. It's not easy. I witnessed it when I was at Illinois with Tracy. I mean, granted, it was 2 injuries back to back, but that's a lot of time off, a lot of idle time to sit and to think. And if we know Ty Rodgers, we know anything about Ty Rodgers, he's going to immerse himself in the team and be a leader. And they need that this year because they do have some retention for sure, but you got new guys coming in, and doesn't hurt to be a guy who's going on year 4 in the program, right?
All right, let's get into it. The NBA draft is Wednesday night, the first round. The second round is on Thursday night. But Illinois has 2 players in the green room, Kasparas, Jakucionis, and Will Riley, the 2 freshmen. Just as we zoom out, Mike, like Brad Underwood and the staff are going to be there. Like these guys are most likely going to get drafted on Wednesday night. And Underwood's probably going to be in the picture on ESPN or NBA Network or all that stuff. What's that mean? What's the impact of that for Wednesday night? What's the impact of that on the program?
Yeah, I mean, it's been building to this point, and it really started with Io. And then, TJ sees that it's possible to achieve your dreams in Champaign. And so you need guys that always get the ball rolling, right? That's part of it. I call it like PowerPoint guys, where you have the recruiting visits and stuff. You got to have guys on the PowerPoint that you can point to. Like they came through this program and they're NBA players now. And I think both of them, Io's already proving it, but TJ's going to get there next year too. Chris Finch has said as much. He's going to be an impactful NBA player. So, for Will and for KJ, these 2 are unique because they're one and dones. But I think it shows that this program has an infrastructure that can support all kinds of prospects. And so these 2 will get added to the recruiting slideshows. They'll be PowerPoint guys themselves. But most importantly, like they're going to experience a night that they'll remember forever. With their friends, with their families, with their coaching staff. And then now comes the time where you got to kind of compartmentalize that night. Because you have to kind of fight the feeling of arrival and, shift to thinking more of this as a beginning. And I think the prospects and the players and the draft picks that do that have the most success out of the gate. I'm really excited for these 2.
I think one of the things that comes out of last year, Mike, is you don't want to rely completely on 2 freshmen being your playmakers all the time because you're going to have to go through the ups and downs of that. These guys both made a huge impact on the season, allowed Illinois to get to the NCAA tournament, win a game, all of that. But it does get you in the one and done business, right? Like Illinois is now in the one and done business, and you need that level of talent at some point, I think, to compete for national championships and compete at the highest level. So now that you'll have these two guys, obviously in Europe, you can sell the best talents. The Kasparas Sakishonis came here, and while he was a projected, first round draft pick when he got here, he remained that, and maybe we'll see tomorrow, elevated his stock. But then Will Riley, guy who's in North America, if you're going after 2026 targets like Dylan Mingo and Alex Costanza, you actually have proof of pudding, that like proof of concept that it can work. Or Jalen Mitchell, who's from Central Illinois in the class of 2027. Those guys are 5-star prospects. It just, it makes that sell a lot easier because you've done it before. Illinois has never done this before.
Yeah, and I think it's a good lesson too, because I agree. I think KJ and Will played a massive role in this team's ability to get back to the NCAA tournament, to win big games throughout the course of the season, despite everything that this team went through. But I think if you zoom out too, you're in the one and done business for sure. But look at this draft class in particular, and Duke's Duke, right? That's hard to kind of replicate that. But a lot of these one and done guys that were tasked with being main contributor, facilitators, offensive engines, their teams didn't win much.
Yeah.
I mean, Illinois went to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, you think of Jeremiah Fears.
Yeah, Oklahoma was on the bubble. Potentially not going to get in. Yeah, like some of the. I mean, do you shift in a way to, if you do get back into the one and done business, because there's going to be peaks and valleys with getting that type of guy if you want them to be an offensive engine, or do you go out and get I'm thinking like a Carter Bryant, Asa Newell, like these guys that don't have to be offensive engines, but can still be one and done type prospects that play more like ancillary high upside roles. That's probably the next box to check for Illinois, is getting a guy like that, where it's like, yeah, we got the one and done prospect that's going to hear his name on draft night, but we didn't have to live and die with every, growing pain that they had, if that makes sense.
You're Marvin Williams, right?
Exactly.
05.
Third overall pick or second overall pick, wherever he was. Yeah.
Second overall pick, and he's the sixth man on a fantastic veteran-laden North Carolina team. Sorry to bring that up, but I figured people would know about that one. All right, Kasper Sakishonis, up and down season. The ups, I think people forget almost sometimes, but there certainly were downs late in the season that, the NBA has to account for. What do you think about his fit in the NBA and how he stacks up in this class?
Yeah, KJ is a bit polarizing. I think the pluses are real. I think the positional size at the point guard spot, I think he has good length. He showed that he could shoot the three at a good clip for portions of the season, definitely pre-injury. He's a rangy rebounder, not only defensively, but offensively as well. He competes. I think he finishes at a really high rate around the rim. I think he was 61% or somewhere around there, high 50s around the rim. But the negatives are real too. I think we saw at times this year without ball screens, he can struggle to create separation and struggle to get by his guy. Now he's able to mitigate that with his ability to play off 2 feet and some of the footwork he has around the basket, which I thought was great and is going to be something, if you're an NBA GM, you're looking at. The handle can improve. I think he's certainly a great processor. So his landing spot ultimately will be a team willing to buy into how he looked, I think, pre-injury. And he's going to have to show enough, or really I say he's going to have to show enough. The draft's tomorrow. He's going to had to have showed enough in these workouts, that he belongs and that he can reaffirm those things. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see where he falls. But the next step for him, I think, is like, hey man, believe you belong. Yeah. Because you do. Like, you got so much talent and you're a top 10 pick for a reason. Now it's time to believe it.
It's hard for me to square what we saw against Arkansas, Missouri. Yeah. Right. Those games, he did look like a top 10 draft pick, maybe even knocking on the door of the top 5. But then late in the season, he just didn't, he was in his head. It just felt like he didn't think he belonged there, but was in that conversation. So that's what's hard to jive for me when thinking about Kasper Sakishonis, because he looked every bit a top 10 pick early in the season, but late in the season looked like a guy that probably could use some time and might need some time. So streaky shooter towards the end of the year. Decision-making was not good. I do like that he cares about defense, but he's not a strong defender. So considering all those things, Mike, like what do you think is his best fit? Like what do you hope, or what's the roster makeup or the coaching of the best fit for Kasper Sakishonis?
Well, this is what's really tough with the draft being before free agency, because we don't know what these rosters are going to look like. I look at Brooklyn. I have a mock to Brooklyn going 8, but Brooklyn has, when you look at the contracts, 6 open roster spots, 4 draft picks, 2 of which they could trade. And so you could think about, hey, here's the ideal role, but then they go pick up guys in free agency, or they trade certain first round picks and get a couple stars. Now what's your role? I think there was part of it for Brooklyn too, where if they ended up keeping those 4 picks, I liked him coming in with a class of guys. I liked him being able to come in and experience summer league and training camp with a group so that he can have a gauge. Like, I'm not the only one that's maybe struggling with adjusting. I think that would be really helpful for KJ. Toronto's needed an initiator for a few years now. Whether they stay in that pick, I mean, there's a lot of smoke that they could get out of that pick. Phoenix, I think, would have to have a very specific role for him, which could be good. Where, I look at the upside of coming in with a class of guys, and I look at the upside of being like, hey, there's really only one roster spot. Here's what I'm going to be doing. Here's who I'm playing alongside. There's a lot of Phoenix Suns fans that, after Isaiah Thomas and, Eric Bledsoe and Tyus Jones, they want a bigger point guard. They just do.
And I do think of that franchise.
Tyler Ulis.
Yeah. Well, I think of that franchise too. And they passed on a Eastern European guard with a big body that could, I'm not saying
Luke is pretty good, isn't he?
I'm not saying Casper is going to be that level, but maybe they can get the light version of it.
Yeah. And so fit is one thing for sure. But look, if he slips past 10, it could get kind of dicey, because when I look at Portland, when I look at Chicago, when I look at Atlanta, and even the Spurs drafting Dylan Harper, most likely, it's a lot of teams that are spoken for on the guard side.
Yeah.
So now you start getting into, okay, well, is it like 16, 17, 18? But you get there and it's like, or even 15, it's like Thunder at 15, Grizzlies at 16. I mean, what do they want to do? Wolves are clearly contending.
Right.
I just, it's tough to predict with him. He's going to really, it's a very wide range.
Yeah, because you have, I saw Sam Vecini, the Athletic, love his stuff, has him going 8 to Brooklyn. Kevin O'Connor, the Yahoo Sports, has him going 22 at Atlanta. That's a wide range, but that's kind of what this draft is, Mike.
Well, it's so good in the middle.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about like Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper, and those guys are really, really strong potential all-star upside guys. 3 to 22 in this draft is kind of nuts. It's really, really strong players that can be real impactful, I think, like starters in this league. So it's no knock on KJ if he ends up sliding. But it just speaks to how strong this draft is.
All right. Will Riley also projected to go in the first round, given that he's there. It's not always a guarantee, but how do you think Will Riley fits in the NBA, and what do you think of him kind of stacking up in this class?
I think guys that have the natural ability to put the ball in the basket like Will does at 6'8" are going to get a crack at the NBA. Multiple cracks, probably, even if it doesn't maybe work out at a first stop. So his stock rose in the second half of the season because some of the secondary playmaking stuff I thought he put on display. He's a very confrontational driver, which I know a lot of front offices like. He was 61% finishing at the rim, which is also a positive. He's probably more of a project than maybe anybody in the first round. It's just, again, speaks to the strength of this draft. So the idea is that you'd get Will into your organization, continue to put, fill out that frame, which I thought he really did. Credit to Fletch, obviously. But he looked like much more of a fluid athlete as that season went on. And I've always said confidence is tied to athleticism. You just become a better athlete and more sure of your movements when you're more confident about your role. But yeah, the wingspan wasn't great. But there's enough tools there, I think, to look past that. I love the Miami fit for him. That's where I have him mocked. That's an equal opportunity system. The ball moves, everyone gets involved. I think it'll accentuate his ability to play in kind of that type of system with a guy like Bam, just like with Tommy, where he can kind of step out and play 5 out, be a hub, dribble handoffs, good passer. The Jazz at 21 intrigue me. Again, Will Hardy, very advanced 5 out system, a lot of similarities with what they ran last year at Illinois. But then you think about, is there anyone in the lottery that wants to take a crack at him? The Hawks are interesting because Karis LeVert is a free agent, and they probably, maybe won't re-sign him. But they do have a lot of wings with Reese Shea and Jalen Johnson. So where does he fit in there? The Bulls, also a lot of guards, a lot of wings. And then, I talked about the Blazers, who just have a lot of defensive mind. And, they just traded for Drew Holiday too. So, they seem to be wanting to win sooner than people think. So it's interesting. He's got a wide range. There's maybe the 2 most unpredictable stocks of landing spots for guys in the draft might honestly both be coming from Illinois, which is kind of crazy.
Is that just youth, or what is it about them?
Yeah, I just think it's youth. I think it's a blend of projecting a bit. I mean, there's definitely, like, Will's somewhat of a project. KJ is just, the highs were so high and the lows were so low that I think it's just got maybe some front offices a little bit, like there's some trepidation there. But I think that's what it is. Cause I mean, like I talked about the strength of this draft, there's so many guys that you really do know what they are at the next level and how they project. And so it's going to be fascinating.
Yeah. With Will, I've always thought, like, what's a team that is willing to be patient? Like if you don't have a lot of, ways to get better, I don't know and you want to make a push and make your team better going into the playoffs, I don't see that as a fit for Will Riley. So like Oklahoma City's first pick, I don't understand that, but like 2, their second pick could make a lot of sense for them just to get a great talent, high upside talent, let them develop. But you mentioned Utah makes a lot of sense to me. Brooklyn, Washington, those teams that have multiple first round draft picks make a lot of sense for Will Riley for me. It'd just be interesting, the development arc for him. Like, is he going to be in the NBA right away? Is he going to be in the G League for some time? I don't know, but it is a high upside bet, I would imagine.
It is. And I think there's a lot of first rounders that spend their time in the NBA. And, more of the second rounders go and spend a lot of time in the G League. Terrence spent some time in the G League this year, not a ton. And granted, Terrence is about body-wise and more NBA ready than any prospect probably in the last 5 years.
Went to the G League and obliterated it, right?
Yeah, he's like, all right, we'll bring you back up here to Minnesota. But yeah, I think for Will, that's why I like Miami. They're very diligent about, how they treat your body and build your body. That's why I have that targeted. But I don't know. That's why I do my mock drafts, and it's like, okay, it's not a big board. It's not how I rank these prospects. It's kind of like what you're hearing / like what fit do I want to see? I was, we'll get to it later. I was pissed Danny Wolf. I'm pissed the Pacers traded their pick because I wanted to see Danny Wolf in Indy, but I digress.
No, I was just thinking about Illinois, like Will Riley. I know there's going to be people out there like, well, if he's going to not play all that much, why didn't he come back to school and make a bunch of money? Well, he's a first-round pick and he can make a lot of money. The other part is you can develop in the NBA, Mike, right? Like they're practicing. All they are doing is playing basketball and around these teams and around these coaches and nutritionists and strength coaches. Like, you can develop while sitting on the bench and not playing a lot in the NBA.
Yeah. I'll say this. It's best for his development to go to the NBA, but also, so I want to say that first before I say what I'm about to say, because you've heard me say this before. If he did decide to come back to college, there's no guarantee it would have been Illinois.
Right.
It just isn't. Like, I mean, you think about it. You get one person in your ear from a business standpoint that's like, put your name in the portal. You have to do it. And then
this offseason, like, how much would Will have made? $3 to $4 million?
Oh yeah, he made a ton. And then now we're talking about one guy hearing their name from Illinois on draft night, but you get 2 instead.
It's a great way of looking at it. All right, let's talk about the rest of these prospects. We got to see it up close. I thought Kylan Boswell did a pretty good job against him, all things considered. But what makes Cooper Flagg such a hyped prospect, Mike.
He's so special. He's as NBA ready as I think we've seen a one and done prospect in probably over a decade. There's been better offensive talents. I want to say there's been better defensive talents too, because Wembanyama came in as like a out of the box defensive player of the year type candidate, but not many number one picks have had this well-rounded of a game. I mean, he proved that he can shoot it. ACC conference play was right around 40% from three. He can guard all over the floor. He's a secondary rim protector. But most importantly, I fell in love with his edge. And it was on display last summer before we even stepped foot on Duke's campus, or maybe he was already on Duke's campus for a little bit, but going and playing with those guys for the Olympic practices. And all those guys were like, dude, this is like a 17-year-old coming in here. And this is my last point with him, right? Like that edge that you have, acting like you belong, backing it up, speaks to what I think is the most crucial aspect of the transition to the league. And it's, do you believe that you belong? And Cooper Flagg believes that. Not only believes he belongs, I think he can be like a generational prospect just from a impact winning standpoint. That's who Cooper Flagg is.
What's your comp? Because with him, it's fun. Like I see Kevin O'Connor, Scottie Pippen, Andre Kirilenko. For me, like the upside feels like a Kawhi Leonard type of presence, right? Just two-way presence. As you said, the will to win, all of that's there.
Kawhi, KG, those two stick out. Kirilenko, for sure. I think people forget how good of a defensive player and rim protector Andre Kirilenko, AK-47 was. I mean, I think all those are solid comps. That's kind of where I'd put him. It's hard to peg. Like he's just a guy that he's like a blown up version of Alex Caruso. Like in all the good traits of Alex Caruso, Cooper Flagg possesses it. Freaking 6'10".
Yeah. All right. I sent you this question beforehand. Dylan Harper, I love him. I just love him as a player. Obviously, the NBA does too. San Antonio does too, because they're probably sticking and picking. Which number one picks over the last 10 years would Dylan Harper have gone over?
Yeah, so I looking through this, he definitely goes over Risa Shea. I had three.
Okay.
So Risa Shea, Ayton, and Markelle Fultz. I didn't put him over Ben Simmons because I think the Ben Simmons erasure is insane. Like this dude was third team All NBA before the back injury, before all this stuff happened, was one of the most impactful players, four-time All-Star, 4-time All-Star, Rookie of the Year. Ben Simmons was really good.
The other two that were interesting were Anthony Edwards and Cade Cunningham to me.
Yeah, I'd take those two.
Yeah.
Like Wemby and Edwards, Cade, Paolo. Go back to,
Zion.
Probably take Zion. I'd take Simmons, and then
Towns. I'd take Towns.
I'm taking Towns. So it's those three for me.
What do you think of him as a prospect?
I like him a lot. I think it's pretty remarkable what he was able to do with that. I know he had Ace around him, but with that Rutgers cast. And I know a lot of good indicators when you look at translating the next level. I talked about it here is your rim pressure. Shout out Isaac Trotter. The guy loves rim pressure. Just getting to the rim at the rate that he got, playing off 2 feet. I believe in the shooting, especially in some of the catch and shoot stuff, where you're playing alongside a guy like De'Aaron Fox, and I don't really, have any qualms about them drafting Dylan Harper while you have Fox and Castle and a few of these guys. I always go back to 2012 with the Sacramento Kings. I don't know for sure, but it seems like they passed over Damian Lillard because they already had Isaiah Thomas and Tyreek Evans. You know who wasn't on the team 2 years later? Tyreek Evans and Isaiah Thomas. So it's just draft the talent and figure it out later.
Agreed. All right. The next group is so interesting. Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, Trey Johnson, Con Knipple, Jeremiah Fierce. How do you kind of separate out that group? Just guys you like, Mike.
Yeah, I actually had it in order: Johnson, Edgecombe, Knipple, Bailey, Fierce. I think Trey Johnson has the most elite basketball trait out of any of them. And that's his ability to make shots in quite literally any way you want. I think the playmaking is underrated. I think he'll be a 25 point per game guy at some point in his career. Edgecombe, more of a project, I think, than people realize. Elite athleticism for sure, dynamic and transition, but he's still so raw in certain areas. People are look at the counting stats and say, man, 2.1 steals a game. He's an elite defender. He's not. He can get there. He has the tools to get there, but he's mechanics need to get better on that end. He's very upright defensively, which leads to being really screenable. He's relied on his ability to recover over the years. Like, hey, I get beat, but I'm VJ Edgecombe. I'll chase you down and block the shot, or I'll chase you down and get back in the play. You got NBA athletes now, so the cutting off angles has to be better. So he's not like an out of the box, ready to help carry a team type guy like some would suggest. But Philly would allow him, I think, to come in and slowly progress. But I can't unsee what I saw with the Bahamian national team, where he's surrounded by Ayton and Buddy Hield and Eric Gordon and has space around him and can go be an athlete. And he'll sleepwalk into 14 to 16 points per game, probably in his rookie year. So like that's how I separate those two. VJ Edgecombe probably still goes 3 to Philly. I just like Trey so much. Knipple, if the Sixers took Knipple at 3, I wouldn't even bat an eye.
No.
I think that highly of him. I'd have no problem with it.
Besides Cooper, I don't think anyone, and it's weird because he's 19. I don't think anyone's more ready to go in an NBA playoff game today than Con Knipple. Like, he's just he can morph his game. We saw it when Cooper went out. He could create a little bit, but he's just an NBA ready guy as a teenager, and just such high basketball IQ. But he's got some crap to him. Like, I like Con a lot.
He's another guy with that edge, and honestly, VJ is the same way too. Trey, like this is like the theme in this draft, where you just got a lot of dogs in this draft, and you mentioned it with Knipple morphing his game. I mean, there's my next thing I wanted to say was he's a chameleon.
Yeah,
and he can play in a myriad of different systems. I think he's one of those guys that, because he has an elite trait, I think Trey Johnson falls in this category too, because he has an elite trait, his ability to shoot the ball. He gets almost like misidentified in terms of he's a really good secondary playmaker. We saw that when Flagg went out. It's
almost like people thought he was Corey Kispert, and this is no shade at Corey Kispert because he's a really good shooter, right? But like, there's more to it with Con.
Way more to it, and he's a guy that I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but you're watching a big time game, an NBA playoff game, and you turn off the TV or you walk out of the arena and you said, Con Knipple won us that game. And it's not just he made shots. It's, our point guard had foul trouble and he was able to step in and kind of carry that load. Or it was the fourth quarter and he had 2 charges on the ball that, shifted the tide of the game. Because I think for the other thing with him, like, I think he's fantastic with angles defensively. Because I think one guy he can look at, and I'm not saying this because this is an Illini Inquirer podcast, is Brandon Pajemski. Because what Pods did was figure out angles in a way that teams just gave up hunting him. They just gave up. Part of that's you take charges on the ball, guys get a little bit more gun shy driving on you. So like that's stuff that I think Con can do, and he sees the game defensively at a really high level. So, and then quickly on Ace, I just I feel for the kid. Because I think clearly it's a representation issue. But that said, I'm not sure things would have been entirely different when the draft process played out. Because I think the rim rate was super low. The assist rate was super low, despite the usage. Not good indicators there. The level of difficulty on the shot making. I think it's fair to question the sustainability of that. So that's just kind of the order that I would rank these guys. And then Fears would be the next guy. I think Fears, you could say, hey, short guy or shorter guy, not an elite shooter, not a great shooter, has never shot it well at really any level. But I think he just is, you have to look at him a little bit differently, because I don't see him as like a, hey, here's our guy, give him the keys type of player. But I think he falls into that ilk of player that's like Terry Rozier, or, almost like a Fred VanVleet, where it's like, hey, they're not our point guard per se, but when they draw the second or third assignment defensively, they can go make a play. And that's more what I see him as opposed to like he's our point guard and take us to the promised land.
Yeah, if Trey Johnson's there at 5 for Utah, I'm running to the podium there. I am running. If Charlotte took Con Knipple at 4 just because they need a good basketball player, like same thing with Philly at 3. If they just want, the floor is so high, and I think he's going to be a very good starter on a good team. Edgecombe, I get. There's some Oladipo to his game. Ace Bailey, I just couldn't take him at 3. The upside is so tantalizing, but the decision making and all the other things, I can't get on board with that. But if I'm drafting 6 to 8, like there's not many opportunities you have to draft a talent like Ace Bailey 6 through 8. So if I'm one of those teams like the Pelicans or the Nets or the Wizards, like he feels like a perfect wizard, like that he's going to get all the shots. Sure, I would draft him there. I don't think I could take him over some of these other players.
No, I had him 6 to the Wizards. I think there's some smoke that he already knows where he's going, but I don't think he'll make it to Brooklyn at 8 like some people have suggested. But that 6 spot in Washington I think is pretty solid given the timeline of that team.
All right, give me a guy projected outside the lottery you love, Mike.
I have him in my lottery.
Okay,
no one else does. I'm not really sure why, but Jace Richardson. I mean, I don't like. There's some major overthinking going on with Jace Richardson. You watch that Pacers Thunder series, and you're like, yeah, those guys know how to play. Jace Richardson just knows how to play. I think he had like a 2.5 to 1 assist to turnover ratio. His splits were basically 50, 41, 84, coming off the bench for most of the year. He guarded the ball at a high level. He guarded in general at a high level. You can look at 6 foot, but the dude's 6'6" wingspan. Like he's long. He has a great lineage. He can play on and off the ball. I have him 13th, but it's just, him being projected like late first round, 25th pick. That's a steal in my eyes. So he's one. The other guy quickly is Thomas Sorber. True center out of Georgetown, advanced field defensively. He's got some polish offensively as well. He's almost 70% around the rim, finishes well in pockets, finishes well in traffic on quick rolls to the basket, up and unders, can finish above the rim. I kind of believe in the shooting if he does decide to stretch a bit. I mean, he was 16% this year, but 36% on his unguarded catch and shoot attempt. So low sample size, but those are 2 guys that I'm looking at. Sorber may still end up going in the lottery, but I have him 17th to the Timberwolves. But him and Richardson, I think, are 2 really good bets.
This guy's probably risen to where he is lottery now. But we were talking before this, like if Oklahoma City wants to trade up for somebody like Cedric Coward, makes a lot.
I didn't even include Coward because I feel like he's in the mix,
and I feel like he's every like basketball nuts like riser in this draft. But like I watched a little bit of him because Illinois was interested in him as a transfer, and obviously he goes to Duke or he committed to Duke. That didn't last because he's guaranteed to be a first round pick now. Only played 6 games at Washington State, Mike, but he does everything well, and there's just a toughness and a physicality to him. And he's an unbelievable story going from D3 to Eastern Washington to Washington State to potentially Duke, but now a potential lottery pick. What do you like about him?
Yeah, the tools are incredible. You look at whoever he is, 6'5" with a 7'2" wingspan. It's very Jalen Williams-esque. Probably not as much of a playmaker as Jalen. I mean, Jalen was doing a lot of playmaking at Santa Clara. But just the two-way ability, his ability to shoot it is translated everywhere he's gone. And I think all the things you hear about from his interviews are just good head on his shoulders, wants to work, came from D3. So, there's no type of entitlement with him. He'll come in and he'll work despite potentially being a lottery pick. There's just a lot of really, really good indicators for Coward.
Can we go negative here? Sparing this on you?
Sure.
What's a prospect like ranking high that you just don't understand?
A prospect ranking high that I don't understand.
Yeah, just like a guy that's got a lot of buzz going in this draft. And you just don't get why he's going top 20 or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think Noah Essengay out of France. I've watched a lot of him. Well, he's playing in Germany, but I just there's not many fits that I see that he's kind of underdeveloped with his body, doesn't have an advanced outside game, relies a ton on just kind of bulldozing into people to get to the line. I just seeing him in the top 10 was like a massive, massive head scratcher for me. I think I saw him projected 9th or 8th, and in some people's mocks. I don't. Yeah, I don't see that one at all. The other one, like I know Igor Demons shot it really well in workouts. He hasn't, and he didn't at all at BYU, and I worry about some of the stuff with his frame too. Can he fill out? Those are maybe the two guys for me that I question a little bit. Outside of that, I
like
a lot of good players, dude.
Yeah, that you just mentioned two names attached to my Chicago Bulls. So I'm fully expecting them to draft one, even though they already have Josh Giddey, which Demon would be just a complete redundancy for that. But who do you like for my Bulls at number 12? Because there's Bulls fans listening to this that are lineup fans. They need some front court help, but I need talent. And I just want to keep on this entertaining style of play. They at least played entertaining style of play and were likable late in the year. Yeah. Who you get for me, Mike?
Well, you mentioned the entertaining style of play. If the Pacers were any indication, I don't see the Bulls stopping that anytime soon. There's clearly some sort of proof of concept. Colin Murray-Boyles would be my pick for them. And you can look and not be intrigued by the shooting numbers, but you talked about guys that you didn't really understand how high they were. I think he's rightfully mocked by the publications, but there's so many NBA draft Twitter people who do their big boards, and it like floods my timeline. Just random people that have their big boards. Yeah. There's people that have Colin Murray-Boyles 2, 3 on some. So that's kind of a head scratcher to me. But like but the reason he's up there is because he's like the analytical darling of this class. And you could look and be like, well, he doesn't shoot it well, Mike. Well, everything else is just crazy high. His ability to get to the free throw line, his ability to play make at 6'6" with a 7-foot wingspan. You can play him as a little bit of a hub in your offense. He's strong enough to kind of back you down and make plays out of it. But most importantly, when I think about the Bulls, this is a guy that I think has all defensive team upside in the NBA. And if you want to play at the pace you want to play at, getting stops helps. And his ability to handle the ball and his length and his rebounding, it ignites the break. So you can play faster. Like if you go out and get a Malowacz, if you go out, I like Sorber at 12 too for the Bulls, but like he's not a guy where when he gets a defensive rebound, you're like bust out, go. So I think Murray-Boyles allows you to do that. So he makes quick reads in transition, secondary transition in the half court. Like I like Boyles a lot. But I could see them going Sorber because like Sorber could play fast. He's a gazelle. He gets up and down the floor. But Queen would be the other guy too that I would throw in there.
All right. Let me give you two more Big Ten big men.
Yeah.
What do you think of Derek Queen and Danny Wolf at the next level?
Yeah, it's interesting because like I talked about Richardson earlier. And like if you had me stack rank Richardson, Queen, and Wolf, like it's a really tough question because I think all three are going to carve out real roles at the next level. I think
some people are overthinking Queen a little bit too.
I agree. I mean, the thing with Queen, I think people are overthinking Wolf. But the thing with Queen too is, some of the defensive stuff, when you looked, it's like, oh, his defensive rating. And I don't really look into that because it factors in the team and, when you were on the floor, like some of that's good. But if you just watch, like, there's still some stuff defensively he needs to really work on. Yeah. Like he's not the quickest guy. He's long, but he's not the quickest guy. But Queen's going to need a very specific fit. And honestly, like I think the Bulls would be that because it allows him to just kind of like play in space and get up and down. I mean, just a lot like what Maryland tried to do this year, just playing a little bit faster. I think people are overthinking Danny Wolf too. I think Wolf, yes, system's going to need to be, a factor, but you're not drafting Danny Wolf to just like be a spacer. Like you're drafting Danny Wolf to do what Danny Wolf does. Now, like I think there's real scale down potential with Wolf because, he can be a multi-read guy off the catch and rip. He's still freaking 7 foot, man. Like, what do we? People are like, oh, like his. I think I heard Bill Simmons talking about it. It was like, yeah, but like, do guys like him work out in the NBA? I'm like, what do you mean guys like him? This dude was playing point guard at 7 foot, making like middle third reads, and like with Vlad Golden playing 2-man game. Like, we haven't seen many guys like him. But even if you take that out of the equation, he's a high level rebounder. So just like I said with the Bulls, right? Like, that's a guy that can start your transition, start your, up tempo play. I think he can be a secondary rim protector, not like your sole rim protector, but get a good guy that levels off the ball and like almost Pascal Siakam, come over and wipe a shot off the glass. He can do that. And there were times this year he guarded on the perimeter. So I'm high on all three of those guys, but Queen and Wolf for sure. Like, it wouldn't surprise me to see Queen go 7. And it wouldn't surprise me to see like the Hawks or the Spurs in the late lottery be like, yeah, give us the 7-foot guy that can handle it and is, the Yale guy that's really smart.
Yeah. Is there any deep sleeper you want to hit on? I don't know if you have a second round guy you like.
I put Chaz Lanier in my first round. Adu Thiero, I think is probably going to end up in the first round as well. But looking at the second round, I mean, there's 2 guys that stick out to me. I just think Vlad Golden's he's gonna like have more than a cup of coffee, I think, in the NBA. But 2 guys that stick out to me in the second round are Elijah Martin, just the winning pedigree. That dude won everywhere he went. Final Fours, both places he went.
Yep. National
championship at one of them. I look at him for sure. Another guy that's just kind of under the radar because I just like his tools, his ability to move and defend. Micah Peavy out of Georgetown is a really interesting one that I think could be a guy that we see on a playoff team next year. Like, oh yeah, he's a really solid 6th, 7th man. So those are probably the 2. Lanier I did have in my first round. I think you can scale down things with him to be a shooter. I think he's a little bit underrated, creating off the dribble. He's really long, obviously defends. Cam Jones is another guy. I know I just gave you like 6.
No, there's a lot of guys that like,
yeah,
especially these small guards like Zion James. I like. I think he's just
the
toughness part of him. The guy I feel like if I invest a second round pick in, I feel like I'm going to get something out of this guy because he's got one of the elite tools of all of college basketball. It's Kobe Bryant. I don't know if he can do anything else in the NBA. Yeah. I know he can probably shoot 45% from 3. And I feel like some team's going to find a use for Kobe Bryant in the NBA.
There's no doubt. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we see his name called. I think most people have him projected like 40 to 45. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 30 to 35 on draft night. And people feel, or front offices feel like, especially if it's a team that has multiple draft picks, they feel like they shirt up something defensively, or they can do it in free agency, or they already have it, or they just got it in the first round and say, hey, let's get the guy that arguably is the best shooter in the draft. That wouldn't shock me at all.
Is there a move you want to see this week, Mike?
Sounds like Giannis is staying put. Would love it if the Warriors did anything. I don't know if they're going to be able to get off Kuminga. Maybe they can do a sign and trade. But
he'd be an interesting one for the Bulls, wouldn't he?
I think so too. And we'd happily take Kobe White. That'd be great.
I don't know if I want to do that.
The Warriors would probably have to attach some assets.
You can take Vooch. You can take Vooch. I'll give you him.
Yeah. I mean, Vooch. They Warriors need a 5-man. But looking, my antennas are up with the Grizzlies. I think it's very clear that they made the deal to get back KCP and Cole Anthony and some picks for Desmond Bane, but I just feel like like a lot of these teams, they're going to be higher on their own teams than you are. they just are, and so I think they could be ripe to make another move. I think Bradley Beal is going to be dealt. There's a reason that the Suns got those 5 second-round picks back in the deal for KD. I think you can package those with Bradley Beal to entice a team, and that's been coming for a long time. I know he's got the no trade clause, which makes things a little bit trickier. This would have been done already, but that's what I see. And as I'm looking at some of these other teams, the Knicks don't have a ton of options really
Detroit.
nowhere to move.
Detroit's the team I'm looking out for. The
Detroit too.
Because, I mean, Jason Tatum's out. Halliburton's out. Dame Lillard's out. I love what Orlando did. That puts them immediately probably in the top 4 of the East. Is they got younger guys who are developing too. But if I'm Detroit, like now it feels like the time to, I don't know if it's Lauri Markkanen or whoever it is, but just add, because you could be in the Eastern Conference Finals next year if you're in the East and have a good team.
And I don't think they need to go crazy either, because I think what you're going to see, because the East is so wide open, you're going to see massive, all-in type deals or, all-in type signings. And then the reality is like, one team wins it. One team from the East makes it to the finals. And there's I could see the Hawks making a play. Yeah. I could see, all these teams that were playing-ish thinking like we're not that far off. I think that's like maybe what it's like Pacer syndrome for a lot of these teams. Like, oh, this could be us. So you're going to have teams, I think, that set themselves back or at least have the fear of setting themselves back and are at least going to test out this year. Can we win with what we got? Because you got to think, if the Celtics brought Tatum back, if, the Pacers brought Halliburton back, then maybe you're thinking, I got to go and get XYZ to compete. There's going to be plenty of teams like the Knicks, maybe like the Pistons. Like maybe you do one move like that you feel like, bolsters that starting lineup a little bit. But maybe you're like, can we make an Eastern Conference Finals? I mean, like, are the Magic done? Do the Magic feel like they've done enough? So it's going to be a wild next, I don't want to say next, couple of days, next month.
The other guy that just intrigues me is Zion, because he still gives you those flashes. But being in the Zion Williamson business, the Pelicans got to be tired of it. But he's still enticing enough that it seems like they want to keep him. But they're not going anywhere in that West. So if you're an East team, do you take a gamble on him and throw a bunch of picks at him?
I mean, that would be interesting for Detroit.
Yeah.
Right. The contract is large given how
availability.
Given his availability. So yeah, I mean, I think the Pelicans have been trying to get off him for a while. That's one that you thought maybe if there was a Giannis deal, he could get roped into, a 3-teamer, something like that, go to Milwaukee. But there's just, I don't know. There's not a lot of teams that, definitely no cap space. The Nets, I think, have the most cap space for this upcoming season, but I know the Pistons have some, but you'd have to really, really buy into the idea that you're getting a healthy and somewhat different Zion Williamson than we've seen.
Yeah, betting your franchise on him.
Yeah.
Big risk. Big risk. Michael LaTulip, that was awesome, man. Happy draft night. We appreciate your insight.
Appreciate you, man.